Hi and welcome back to ScottiesTech.Info. I'm Scotty with my co-host Cletus, and today I want to talk about deepfakes. You've probably heard a lot about this. It began a couple years ago. The short version is that a deepfake is when they're basically someone is making fake audio or a fake video clip that appears to be the real thing. In other words, for audio, they're impersonating. They can take audio clips of a certain person, process them in a computer, and then just like type out any text, and they can basically make that other person's voice say whatever they want. In the case of deepfake videos, usually what they're going to do is they're going to take, there was a good example of former US President Barack Obama, where they took his face and another guy's voice. He had a voice similar to Obama's voice, and they basically made a clip of Obama saying things that he never said. Now, it's kind of interesting. The audio is actually very good right now. It's quite convincing. Video, not so much. There are several different techniques for creating deepfakes, and there are pieces of software that are available that you and I can download. You can make deepfake audio and video with these. Usually for video, for example, it takes upwards of a day to several days of number crunching time. In other words, you feed in still images or video clips or audio clips, and the computer system has to sit there and run this algorithm and crunch all this data so that it can then generate the fake audio or video. The professionals, i.e. government agencies like DARPA or corporations like Facebook and Google, and also researchers at various universities, they have better systems, and some of them are actually quite good. And their tools are not, in many cases, not available to the general public, but the fact remains they can make fairly good deepfakes. I should note that the whole deepfake thing began several years ago with one particular guy who decided that he was going to make fake videos where he would take a celebrity's face and superimpose it on the face of a woman in a naughty video of questionable taste. So that's how the whole thing began. And since then, as I said, we have deepfakes of Obama. We have, there was a little thing where everybody was creating deepfakes where Nicolas Cage was the star of like every movie in the past 10 years. So it was like Nicolas Cage as Gandalf, Nicolas Cage as you know, everybody and all the stars in various movies. And of course, people are concerned about the political and social implications of being able to essentially make audio or video such that it appears that anyone is saying anything that they want them to say. So deepfakes have been in the news a lot lately in the past couple weeks. The Wall Street Journal reported that $240,000 was stolen from an unnamed company, and basically an underling supposedly got a call from the CEO of this company saying, yeah, you transfer $240,000 to some account in Honduras or something, and because we need to avoid late fees, blah, blah, blah. So the underling transferred the money. Then a little while later, he got another call, also apparently from the CEO, saying, yeah, you need to transfer more money. And then he became suspicious, contacted the real CEO, and discovered that, oops, it wasn't the real CEO of the company. It was a deepfake that was accurate enough that it even had the CEO's German accent, so it was quite convincing. Also, California recently passed a law making it illegal to distribute deepfake videos about a certain political candidate. The idea being that, of course, with the impending 2020 election, some people may try to sway public opinion in one direction or another. That's actually an interesting move because, you know, California making it illegal to distribute deepfake videos, does that mean that, you know, companies like Facebook and YouTube/Google will be responsible since they're the ones distributing? Does that mean that they're not going to show any clips of political candidates unless it comes from, you know, CNN or something? Or how are they going to know? And are they held responsible? Or I'm not really sure how that's going to work on a practical level, but that's what they did. Samsung also announced that they have a new piece of software whereby from one single image of a person, they can create a deepfake video, which is pretty wild because usually you need quite a few images, from different angles and quite a bit of processing time. Of course, the quality of that system is probably not the greatest, but on the other hand, researchers at MIT say that perfect deepfake videos are still several years away. As I said, at the moment, when you see one of these videos, they can mimic like the movement of the person's lips. They get facial expressions mostly correct, the intonation, the sound of the person's voice. There's different techniques that they use, usually in the more readily available, sort of cheaper systems, the more easily available pieces of software. The end result, you can still tell that it's fake. So what MIT is saying is basically, in just a few short years, that will no longer be the case, and basically anyone with a computer will be able to crank out a fake video in no time flat. And finally, because everyone is so concerned, Facebook has announced a $10 million reward of some sort for their deepfake detection challenge. That kind of makes sense, because if Facebook and YouTube are sort of going to become liable as distributors of deepfake videos, then obviously they would want to be able to detect them. So of course everyone is kind of freaking out about deepfakes, and I kind of look at the whole thing and I go, well, hang on a minute. I mean, first of all, the audio, as we've seen with this case of the $240,000 fake CEO phone call, the audio is very convincing. Especially if it's a deepfake audio and it's played over a telephone line. The bandwidth of a telephone line it's very, or of a telephone call, since it's all digital these days. The bandwidth of telephone calls is very low, so it kind of distorts your voice. And even if the deepfake audio isn't perfect, if you get a phone call, yeah, now it's pretty hard to know if you're talking to the person that you actually think you're talking to. Video, on the other hand, as I said, it still has quite a ways to go. If you actually pay attention, like if you're watching this video of former President Obama, you can tell it's not him. He doesn't sound exactly the same. His mannerisms and facial expressions they're a little bit off. It's like if you ever watched video of him, and of course if you're American you certainly saw lots of video of him, you should be able to look at this deepfake video of Obama and go, yeah, that's not really him. But the thing is, a lot of people are saying like, well, this is going to change everything, and how will we know if anything is true? And to me it's like, well, hang on a minute. I mean, we already have a lot of doubts about what's true and what's not. I mean, everyone is talking about fake news, and we have you turn on the TV and they tell you country X is evil, and person Y, who's the leader of country X, they're evil, and many people just sort of go along with that because you listen to what people in positions of authority say, and there you go. What I tend to do is I go, well, that's interesting. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. And then usually what I'll do is I'll say, well, hang on a minute. I know like 3 people who actually live in country X and have lived in country X their entire lives. So what I'll do is I'll actually ask them. For example, one of my friends, he actually came on a sort of a whirlwind European trip. And so when he was over my place, I kind of, went to a cafe, sat down, said, like, I heard all these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is what, our media here is telling me about your country X. And so, like, are these things true? And interestingly enough, he said, he wasn't at any risk of being, thrown in prison or something because he's outside his country where I live, right? And, he said, well, number 1, it's kind of true, but maybe that's a little bit overblown. Number 2, was like, 50% of the population live in poverty. And he said, yeah, well, your media is saying, 50% of the population lives in poverty. Country X is evil. Leader Y is evil. And he said, 10 years ago, 80% of the population was living in poverty. So actually you can look at it one of 2 ways. I look at it and I go, well, geez, 10 years ago, it was really bad. Today, yeah, it's still bad. Objectively, 50% still live in poverty. But that's a huge improvement from 80% 10 years ago. So it just kind of depends on how you want to look at it. But then he'll say, yeah, some things are still bad. We need to fix this. We need to fix that, blah, blah, blah. But he says, overall, Leader Y is actually doing a good job so far. So, yeah, I have to give credit where credit is due. But it is true that half the country is still living in poverty. and we go on like this, and, I ask questions, and he gives, as far as I can tell, honest answers, and suddenly I have a very different perspective. Not everyone has the opportunity to do that kind of thing because we're all living our lives and, having, families and raising children. And so it's not easy to actually find the time to dig into this stuff and to read like every source you can find and to go directly to the source. I mean, if you don't know someone who lives there, you can't get sort of the other side of the story and get a more balanced view about things. So we tend to just see what's on TV and go, oh yeah, that's what's happening. Bottom line is this problem of not being able to believe what you see existed long before deepfakes came along. So of course, to me, it's kind of like, well, I'll try to go directly to the source. With a deepfake video or deepfake audio, why don't you just go ahead and ask the person? If there's a deepfake of some political candidate, well then, next time they have an interview, just ask them and say, was this video of you? Did you actually say that? And the person will say, no, I never said that, blah, 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 blah. Or they'll say, yes, I did say that, and I think it's true because blah, blah, blah. I mean, how is that any different than now when one candidate claims that the other candidate said something, and then he says, no, I didn't say that, you're twisting my words, and blah, blah, blah. This is nothing new. Or, you go straight to the source. In terms of like deepfake audio, like, do you have caller ID? You get a phone call and it's supposedly like from, your daughter or something. Well, is it her phone number? Is it not her phone number? Does she say, oh, well, yeah, the battery in my phone died, so I'm calling you from a friend's phone, whatever, blah, 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 something happened or whatever. Okay, so then you've got this strange number. Call that strange number back. Ask her something that only the two of you would know so that you're sure that it's actually her. I actually have a friend of a friend who was in a situation where they got a phone call saying that their daughter had been kidnapped. And it was the kind of thing where they had not actually kidnapped her daughter. What they wanted was to extort money, and they had this whole scheme worked out. I won't go into all the details. But the mother answered the phone and, of course, was just, obviously freaked out and was actually feeding the caller information. This wasn't, a deepfake audio, but it's just an example of the kind of thing that can happen. The mother was talking and was just, nearly hysterical, thinking that her daughter had been kidnapped and they were going to have to pay this ransom, and I hope she's safe. And because she was worked up, she was actually giving the fake kidnappers information about her daughter. It was kind of like a cold call, and she was saying, let me talk to blah, giving the girl's name, and which they didn't even know. And so then, the husband takes the phone away from it and says, put her on the phone, I want to talk to her right now. He went through a whole series of things, and he very quickly discovered that no, this was just a cold call and they were just trying to extort money and they didn't have the daughter at all. And then he simply actually called the daughter, and the daughter goes, no, I'm fine. What are you talking about? So this is the kind of thing that you can do very simply, and there you go. We don't really have a problem anymore. In addition to that, there's lots of new technology that's coming out in order to help prevent and detect deepfakes. So several universities and various industries and even DARPA, good old DARPA, they're working on better deepfakes. They're trying to perfect their deepfakes so that they can detect deepfakes. So they're actually making the situation worse so that they can make it better, which is actually kind of funny. Also, one of the creators of some deepfake audio software, he recently came out and he said, yeah, actually, we're thinking of trying to integrate some kind of watermark into the audio. And, that's another option, is to sort of add something, like you might, when you upload a video to YouTube, it obviously can scan the video and do face recognition, and, it has to match to your, say, your account image, or your, somehow they'll have some sort of authentication mechanism where, say, if you upload a video to YouTube and it's of you, you have to actually confirm that, yes, that's you. That's kind of probably an overly simplistic example, but the idea being that there would be some sort of watermark or encoded something in a video itself, such that when it plays online, it will say, yes, verified as this is the person who, this actual person we verified, it's actually them. The idea is that it's kind of like two-factor authentication, where you log into a website with a password, they want your cell phone number, and they'll send you an SMS, and if there's anything questionable, they can confirm that it's you. Well, quite a number of people are already working on systems where it's kind of like two-factor authentication, but for video and for audio, where we will be able to be relatively sure that what we are seeing or hearing is actually the person. Obviously, then people will try to find ways around these new technologies and blah, 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 but that's kind of the way that it always goes. So the bottom line is that, in my opinion, no one is going to die when it comes to deepfakes. The problem is that for a very long time now, we have been used to being able to believe everything that we hear. Like if we get a phone call, you can recognize the person's voice, and suddenly that may not be true anymore. And then you have deepfake videos. It's like, well, geez, how am I going to know that that video of that person, when you're watching this video, how do you know that it's actually me and not a deepfake? Well, yeah, like you could ask me and I'll say, yes, that was me, or no, it wasn't. That's pretty easy. But the problem is that we're so used to actually, having video is like the go-to thing. It's like if someone tells you that something happened, well, that's one thing. If you see photographs of an event that someone told you about, that's another thing. But if you have video of it, everyone's got their smartphone and sharing video everywhere. And so suddenly we're confronted with the fact that, well, maybe it's not going to be so reliable. And of course, we've known this is coming for a long time because Hollywood can create all kinds of crazy special effects, and they can insert actors in old movies and it looks totally flawless. And this, of course, takes, like roomfuls of very powerful computers and literally days and weeks and months of processing time to actually make it look realistic. And as computers become more and more powerful, and as we have like this AI, machine learning algorithms, suddenly the software and the hardware are both becoming more powerful, such that we will be able to do this much more easily. And the reason it's so disturbing is because we've sort of relied on video especially for so long, and we simply won't be able to do that anymore. But as I said, people are already developing sort of countermeasures to this, and it's not really going to be the giant disaster that everyone thinks it's going to be. I think that we'll find ways around it, and as I said, like there are very simple things you can do. You can call a person back. You can, if you get a phone call and it sounds like something bad has happened, you call them back, and worst case, you just get in your car and you drive there where that person is and make sure they're okay. And well, then you've learned something. And then, of course, states and countries are now passing laws against this kind of thing. And so I think in the end, we're going to be okay when it comes to deepfakes. It will not be the end of the world. And honestly, there's a lot going on right now, politically, socially, culturally. There are globally, between countries and everything. There are a lot of things. Even the climate and everything. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. And to me, yeah, deepfakes just barely even registers as a blip on the radar. Because all these other concerns seem to be way more important to me. So, yeah, I'm not worried about deepfakes. For more techie tips, see ScottiesTech.Info. Thanks for watching. See you next time.